to another edition of the Zoom with Our Feet podcast, the pod about learning media production. With me, your host, T. Mac, a professional photographer, videographer, and teacher. On this episode of the ZoomPod, chances are excellent. If you watch the Cleveland Cavaliers on TV, you've seen this guy's work. Cleveland-based Dan Sevic joins me to talk about his journey in broadcasting. From finding a TV class at Cleveland State with our buddy John Scrata, to building a TV truck from scratch, to directing Cavs broadcasts for Bally Sports. Our guest speaker is in the photo lab. Let's talk to a pro. Dan Sevic, welcome to the Zoom with Our Feet podcast. How are you, sir?
Great to be here. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Been a while.
It's been way too long.
So, I start with everybody, same way. How did your journey in this crazy broadcast business start?
It started in college. Actually, you already heard part of the story from John Scrata.
The other S.
The other S in SNS video. Took this TV class. It was intro to broadcasting, and it was like, John, we gotta take all these classes. This is us. This isn't sit in a classroom, read a textbook, take notes. This is sit in a classroom, take notes, take your notes, go in the other room, bang out a 30-second commercial, shoot something, shoot it good, shoot it bad, forget to white balance. It's make mistakes. And it just stuck. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of it for both of us. And I grew up wanting to be Bob Barker. My mom always talked. I was the kid who had a microphone. I was this guy, microphone finger. I wanted to be on camera. I was always fascinated with it as a kid. If I saw a TV crew or a celebrity, it was that. And then I get to college and it was just, oh, wow, that's how this is done. This is great. And that was it. Hooked instantly and didn't. Within the first 6 months in the program, I was like, I will not go back. This is where I'm going to be.
Well, in his telling of it in a previous episode, he said you walked in and said, hey, I'm thinking about taking a TV class. Typical John fact today. He goes, I'm in.
Yeah. Well, that was it. I mean, him and I just had we had a very different, we're two very, very driven people, very singularly focused, but we're two very different personalities. We'll always have been. But it's part of why we click. And he just became somebody that I liked just spending time with. And we had common interests, music, sports, my best friend growing up, was in a band. John played drums for him. Dave, my best friend Dave. Hey, this is my new drummer John. I always remember that day. This is hey John, Dan, John. Hey, we all go to Cleveland State. Great. A month later, Dave's over there going, hey, thanks for hijacking my drummer. He's thinking he's getting a new awesome friend out of it, and it's like, no, he's my friend. He'll play drums for you, but he's my friend. So yeah.
So leaving Cleveland State, the SNS twosome, what were the career goals at the time?
Get a job. Get a job, work, figure something out. I think early on, I didn't have this career path in mind. I was exposed to it in college, and I thought about it, but in the back of my mind, there was no way. Sports was a different animal. I mean, to me, sports was in the same realm as, Hollywood, making TV shows. That's different. That's big. That's not local news. That's not working in a in a post house making commercials. That's where I would have, I would have been fine ending up there. Sports never hit my radar. I shouldn't say it didn't hit my radar. It did hit my radar. But that wasn't, I never know. Until about maybe my senior year, this wasn't what I thought. But I did. Pat Murray, I always remember Pat Murray came and spoke. And for those of you who don't know, Pat Murray, for people who live in the greater Northeast Ohio area, Pat Murray was the only, yes, they called him the Great One. They still do call him the Great One because he is still the Great One, because I'm not here without a guy like Pat Murray who blazed the trail for me. He produced and directed one-man band Cleveland Cavaliers and Cleveland Indians back in the 80s and 90s. He did it all, and he spoke to my class. John and I sat in the back of class, long hair, my leather jacket. Poor Frank Masick, who was at Channel 3, directs the news now. He sat between John and I. Quietest, nicest, sweetest guy in the world, this poor guy. And John and I would just torture our instructors. But Pat walked in. This is Pat. He directs the Cavs. I didn't say a word. I sat there and hinged on his every word. I went, I want to be him someday. And again, we all say that. I want to do that. I want to be him someday. You know what? 30 years later, I am him. It happened, and it took a lot of work, but anyone can do it.
First professional gig, money paying gig.
City of Cleveland. My instructor in college, I consider him one of my three mentors. John Bond. It was his first year of instructing at Cleveland State. That poor guy, he got me and John Scarata and a class full of other misfits, and we were the two rowdiest of the bunch. He called us rock and roll. Long hair, obnoxious, making wisecracks. But you know what? We were the first ones with our project done. We would turn in an extra one for extra credit because we were bored while we were waiting on everyone else to finish. And generally, our project was the best one out of the bunch. And someone like him, he had a lot of fingers in a lot of pies, and he was doing a lot of things. And he just said, "Hey, my friends over at the City of Cleveland need help. Dennis Knowles, Henry Picterna. We need camera people." And they would take us Cleveland State students out, and we would be the camera crew and the audio crew for like City of Cleveland flag football in the middle of winter, or rec league midnight basketball. Hey, come run. That was my first time ever running camera for the great Pat Murray. I ran game camera, and at halftime he pulled me off and put me on a handheld because I was a horrible hard camera op. I mean, that's how you learn. But the City of Cleveland, John got us in. We got credit for it, and eventually they went, "This guy's dumb enough to stay around. Hey, Dan, do you wanna? Hey, we got council meetings on your days off from school. We'll pay you $50. Come sit for 6 hours in the back of a room and shoot a council meeting because none of us want to do it." And I did, and then it turned into I did a weekly. They from there they parlayed that into a weekly TV show for me that I produced called Just Chillin'. I won some awards. We did a documentary, and then I was still in college, and then eventually the sports thing happened.
Did the experience, I know the answer, but I want people to understand there is a direct connection.
Got to get the soundbite.
To the doing and the first job, and the mentors and the first job, and how this business rolls. Because now, as the other end of it, I'm recommending my John Scratas and Dan Sevics all the time to people, and it's how I think the business sustains itself.
The business is definitely, has and always will be referral based. We're a referral business, And there's no better referral than someone who is a professional who is greatly loved and admired going, hey, see this kid over here? I think he has what it takes to make it. He or she has what it takes to make it. Give them a shot. I'll sign my name on this dotted line. And again, you can take a group of college kids or a group of high school kids and you can send them out, hey, come on, let's go do a project. That's one thing. But then go, oh, hey, ESPN's coming in and we need a bunch of utilities. Hey, Dan, how would you like to go down to Youngstown and get paid $250 to stand in a snowstorm and pull cable for a handheld guy for the Division II football game semifinals? Yeah, okay, I'm in. And then it just breeds more. Yeah, again, without the mentor, the mentoring process is a big part of it. Early on, if you're smart enough and wise enough to attach yourself to good mentors, your career will have wings. But now, after 35 years, I have to be that guy who I want to be that. I say that because I have three mentors, John Bond being the first, because he's the guy who got me into this business. The second one is Steve Warren, who you had on this show, who for a brief time was my boss, but now we work in different capacities. He handles operations for Bally and live sports, and I deal with him during basketball season. The third one was Mike Lear. Mike Lear was the head of broadcasting at the Indians in '94 when the Indians moved into their new ballpark, and he needed a young, fresh out of college kid who could edit, shoot, write, learn, direct, listen, and work on a little bit of a shoestring, because he couldn't go to a post house and steal some editor who was making 50, 60 grand a year 35 years ago. He had to find somebody who he could pay bare bones, and that was me. And myself and Steve Warren went with Mike over to the Indians, and I helped them get the scoreboard up and running and got to play with every piece of equipment, and the rest, that kind of led me down that path.
It's funny you mentioned the sort of circle of it all, because I can very clearly remember a mentor of mine saying, after he had made that arrangement for me to go work, he looked at me and he said the following: "You now represent me." And he let that hang, and I'm looking at him and he goes, "If this goes bad, he's not going to call you. He's going to call me. So you represent me. You have the skills. I think you have the attitude. And, but always remember, you're working on my Rolodex now." And it struck me then, and I almost verbatim have given that speech to a number of students that I felt, as you said, were worthy of advancement. But I can pull them aside and say, okay, this is how it works. They know me. They don't know you. But they are willing to take a chance on you because you know me. But if this goes bad, and there's a lot of ways that it could, they're going to call me. They're not going to call you. That's just how the business works. So, good luck. You're ready to fly? Go.
Don't mess up, kid. Yeah. I feel like I've met so many young people who you know within about a month or two. It comes down to
3 shows, dude. Come on.
It comes down to attitude. It comes down to work ethic, attitude, and the it. Like, everyone who works in television, especially in sports, you have that weird it. You get it. You understand it. This is entertainment. This is a business. It's fun, but it's still a business. And if you treat it like that, and you have a great work ethic, and you have a great attitude, I've rarely had to have that. Again, I feel like now in my later stages of my career, I don't have to have that. Like, if I'm going to put my name on somebody for something, I already know that they're going to do fine because I've worked with them enough that I know that they're not going to burn me. And that's 30 plus 30, 35 years of me looking at someone and going, I was them. I was them back in 1991.
So up to now, we've done, in the words of our mutual friend John Scrata, stage one of a career, and that
Act one.
Act one, correct? Sorry, 3-act structure. If you now transition to now you're at the Indians, working on the scoreboard, meeting all of the players in the local / regional. And it was a great time. That team was outstanding in the early 90s. I mean, we both took part in all of that on the baseball side during that time. But I think it's all a setup for Act 2. So tell me about Act 2 for you, and somewhere in Act 2, there is a point where you are offered freelance work. You've done the entry level, you've got your mentors, you've sort of starting to target what you really want to do. Tell me about Act 2 and where does freelance enter into that picture?
Freelancing hit me square in the face in 1994. I had done a little bit of stuff with like the city of Cleveland, um, Beechwood Studios, Classic Video. I went out to hey, we've got a thing with a bunch of little kids today. Can you come run camera out at the Coliseum for us? We'll pay you $75 and buy you lunch. All right, yeah, I don't have anything going on. And so for an hour, I'm out there, and rest his soul, Steve Bunn would yell in my headset at me, give me a shot of this, give me a shot of that. That was my introduction into freelancing, and I learned real quick that that's how all of this, especially sports, when I got to the Indians, that's how this operates. It operates in a very freelance heavy environment. And then in '94, when the strike hit, I was out of work. I mean, I put a lot of eggs in that baseball basket. I put a lot of faith in Mike Lear and Steve Warren to take good care of me at the Indians. And then Major League Baseball decided to go on strike. And Steve Warren went, look, he goes, I can't guarantee I can get you work. He goes, but I can give you names. I can put you in front of people and tell them what you've done. And I did everything. I ran camera. I ran audio. I was a utility. I did every possible crew position. I worked for Image Video. I worked for classic video productions, Jerry Patton, Bob Anderson. At that point, I mean, they weren't at the Coliseum anymore. They were just moving down to the arena. I did all of that. I was slowly putting those freelance skills in my belt, but I still, unlike John, who dove headfirst into freelancing, I still kept my head in that corporate world working for the Indians, because then when the Indians came back from strike, I went in '95. I went back to directing the Jumbotron. John was my TD and the editor. And then when I'd have to go and do things, John would slide over and direct. And Steve Warren oversaw that. And so we kind of, I built a lot of skill sets and learned a lot about that freelancing that way. And it was nice because then in the off seasons, it was like, hey, Dan, you want to run camera? Image Video would call, hey, Dan, come run camera for us. We've got a basketball game in Canton. We've got a sewing show in our studio. We've got, they used to do these weird show. I don't know. It was a show with kids, and, it was kind of like a friendly Scared Straight. And they had this guy, Stewart, who was an educator. and they bring kids on and talk about stuff. And John and I ran camera and all that stuff, but all right, yeah, you ran camera, but you also had to set up the cameras. You also had to tear down the cameras. You also had hey, we got to run monitors and audio, and so I never focused on one aspect of the business. The Indians afforded me the ability that any piece of equipment in that room I could touch. Not everyone gets that. If you go to a TV station, if you're an editor, you're an editor. If you're a shooter, you're a shooter. You worked with the blinders that were put on you by the jockey. No, here, this is your room, Dan. We need this done. Make it happen. And up until like after the first year, when they hired Johnny, they brought in Pete Berman, who's at the Cavs now. They brought in Joseph Simmons, who was like another producer. Like that first year or two, like I was building everything. Like I was building headshots, I'm building vignettes, And then we had a weekly TV show. It was nice that I was able to immerse myself in a lot of different skills, and that led me to freelancing, and then finding what was my calling, at least initially.
Led me right to the next question.
Yeah,
who's interviewing this?
I've done this before.
So that led you to directing. What was the first thing you directed?
Well, directing.
I mean, beyond the what you just described, which is the immersive part of everything, but there's a difference from that to we think of you as a potential director.
Well, I started directing all the Jumbotron stuff, and for us older television watchers, back in the day, sports weren't all on cable or streaming. They were on over-the-air channels, for those of you who remember what over-the-air channels are. And they weren't always on. There were days, Sundays, if there was football, if there was the Masters, a Cleveland Indians game on a Sunday Masters weekend was probably not getting aired. That game was not on television because no one was going to bother putting it on, because it was going to take a beating in the ratings. So what we did is we treated it like television. We got an extra camera. We did a 4-camera show. I directed the TV show, and it went to the suites in the arena, or in the ballpark, I should say, and it went to all the news stations. And then I'd go home and I'd watch the news, and I'd watch sports, and I'd go, "There's my show. Hey, look, I want to see what they use. What did I use? Did I do a good job? That double play, did I do a good job heroing it? Did I score the runner in a timely fashion? Did I get a good react at the end of the game of the pitcher when he won? Did it? I watched. What were the news stations using? That was my kind of my baptism into directing. And then the city of Cleveland, actually, Pat Murray used to direct all of their sports. And then Pat left. If you remember, Pat left in late 90s, early 2000s. And even before that, he just became busy with other things. And so the city of Cleveland went, "Hey, we can't get Pat Murray. You work in sports now. Here, come direct flag football. Come direct Muni League football. Come direct flag football. Come direct the Larry Doby charity game at League Park, between the firemen and the policemen. You're our sports guy. You tell us where to put the cameras, how to number them. We'll hand you a script." I mean, the guy, Tim Wells, he's still to this, he just retired this year. I mean, in the 90s, in 90, 91, when I was at Cleveland State and we were doing those games as college kids, he was the guy calling them. He was the guy producing them for the city. He literally just retired this year. I mean, it just, here you go. Sports, television here. You make it work, because everyone at the city, they were production people, and they were very good production people, but they didn't have that sports eye, I guess.
Yes. Experience.
Experience, yeah.
It's a specific
It's a
I always tell
skill
people
set.
that sports is a specific genre within a genre.
Yeah.
That live editing, if you will, that we all know is funny. You talk about scoring runners, and that's all a part of the sequencing and all a part of the basics of remote multi-camera productions.
Any sport. It's a rhythm.
Any sport.
It's a musical number. It really is.
It is.
It really is.
Okay, so you were essentially honing your skill at it. You
Still
you
am.
had no idea what was down the road, but you were building a foundation of experience. And then when does the serious of oh, and by the way, you're forgetting, shout out to John Scrata. So S&S production somewhere in there is created, and off you go doing independent productions, and you are taking on the role of director, and John was, you guys were running the company, but on shows you were the director. Again,
Yeah.
building up skills and experiences and stuff like that. When does the serious offer for you, director now, come?
2010. So John and I had started the company in 97, like he had said. Somewhere around 03, 04, we build the truck. We start doing high school stuff, Spectrum, Mansfield, WMFD, Cox Cable, Lorain County. John and I were doing all of that. We built this little 5 camera bread truck, replay.
Killer.
It was to do our own little thing, an analog truck. Eventually, it would turn into a high def truck and then turn into other things. So that was part one. Part two of what leads me to where I am today was got into freelancing. And when I wasn't doing my own thing, I became an EVS op. I became part of the replay posse. I did everything. I TD'd for a while. I TD'd a bunch of Steve Warren stuff. I did a bunch of TDing for other people. I never did a lot of pro stuff. I did a few Indians games. I did a few Cavs games. Mostly home shows for Fox back then. The Bob and Doug show when Bob Pennell, Doug Johnson.
That's right.
I was like kind of their fill-in guy when Dan, their TD, couldn't do it. I only did it a couple times, but I was always like the guy. Hey, we've got this little one-off show, the Bill Cowher show at some bar in Pittsburgh. Can you come do this talk show? Or women's professional basketball in Columbus back when before the WNBA, there was that other women's. Hey, come down and do the playoff games in Columbus for Prime Network. I mean, I did a lot of that. I TD'd. I did a bunch of things. TDing was fun. TDing and audio A1 are the two hardest jobs in television. Not that I shy away from hard work, but I'm also smart. I'd much rather be all my friends were back in the tape room having fun, getting in my headset, telling me how much fun they were having and hooting and hollering while I'm sweating.
Climate controlled.
Yeah, while I'm sitting there pushing the buttons. So I made my way back to tape, learned replay. Then the Elvis the Elvis was already kind of like it was.
Yeah, those systems had come out.
Yeah, when the Elvis came out, it revolutionized sports because it became the minute the pitch was thrown, you could be already sitting on the replay. The pitch hadn't even been hit yet, and the replay was queued. And you could build instant packages, the pitch by pitch in baseball. It's the easiest way to explain it. 5 seconds later, you're queuing it up because all you had to do was mark in on that last pitch, marking out, and hit cue, and there it is. And as the guy's walking, the guy's like 3 steps off the mound, and they're already going to that package. That's where that's where I kind of went to because it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. And I was working with all my friends. It was John and guys like that. I was asked to become the tape producer / EVS op for the Cavaliers in 2006. It's the year STO started. The Indians started STO. They started their own network. Fox got exclusivity from the Cavs, because at that point you still had over the air was still a player. That was the first year of exclusivity. So all 82 games are going to be on Fox. Bob Pennell said, if we're going to do this, I need a guy who, that's all he does. He's going to manage these hard drives and these highlights. And again, that was when LeBron was here. I mean, there were a lot of eyes on those shows. Those shows were getting double-digit ratings. And now you're going to be doing every show. And so it was, hey, Dan, do you want to do this? And I fell into it. And when I wasn't doing that, I would go and direct the stuff that John and I were doing. So I was dipping my toe into the pro sport water and directing the smaller stuff. And they were slowly creeping and converging towards meeting at some point. And then now I'm here.
Describe for me when that meeting took place, who said we would like you to essentially begin doing what your current job is. I'm not giving away any secrets. You are the television director for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Mm-hmm. When did that happen? How did it happen? And I think the last part of it, because I think I know what the answer is did you think you were ready?
Yeah. Doug Johnson was the coordinating producer of Fox at the time. Bob Pennell was the producer. They were my bosses. I was the tape producer / EVS. They needed to make a change at director. I knew the show. What I lacked in pro experience in directing a show, I made up for I knew the elements. I knew as the EVS op, when we get to halftime, the open, this element comes from here, this comes from graphics, this goes to here. I was so I was so intertwined into the fabric and the layout of the show that when they made the decision that they needed a new director, they could have gone and gotten someone who had NBA experience, but then they would have to learn Bob Pennell's cadence. They'd have to learn the show. They'd have to learn the technical director. They'd have to learn me and what I do. They'd have to learn how to work with the talent. I'd spent 4 years traveling with Fred McLeod, Austin Carr, Scotty Williams a little bit in that first year, Jeff Phelps, all of those people, Allie Clifton, at some point she was in there. Doug and Bob made the decision that what made more sense was the practical knowledge of the show. They knew I directed. It wasn't like I was coming at them and they were going, all right, hey, this guy's never directed, let's give him a job. They had seen what I was doing. It was airing, my stuff was airing on cable channels. Some of it was airing on their competing network, SportsTime Ohio. They saw what I was creating with John and I in the company when we were doing things like John Carroll football, Baldwin Wallace basketball, things like that. So they're like, look, this guy knows how to direct. He just has not done the big boy stuff yet, but he knows the show. So let's put him in the chair. And that was the conversation. Doug was like, look, I'm going to give you the next 5 games, and you're on the schedule for the next 5 games. December 26th versus Utah, 2010. Here you go. Merry Christmas. This is your first game. Have at it. 2010. And I did the game, and it came at me at 100 miles an hour, and I missed a lot of things. I mean, I don't think I missed any sales elements. Bob kept me pretty honest. Get to that. The speed of the game from high school to college, from college to pro, is exponential. It is crazy how fast the game moves. And that was, when that game was over, I looked at Bob and I said, Bob, I'm really sorry. And he goes, you were fine. And I didn't feel fine.
the mark of any, I've been pushing lenses for 1,000 years, and I would still get to the end of the game, and I would go, God, I missed that.
I missed that one.
Yeah. So we've established now since 2010. Tell me about, define the role. So people hear director, and they tend to think of film, and completely different genre, completely different. Define the role of, and you can do it in two parts. Define the role of a television director. You were just starting to. And then, secondly, specific to basketball, but also you mentioned business. So what a lot of people don't understand is what you were actually saying is you were already immersed in the show and all of the elements of the show, and when everything happened, all of the mentions, all of the breaks, all of the, guess what? The tape room's building all that stuff. And so you knew that really important chunk of it already. Talk about the role of a director and that, or the many roles of a director, because it's not just cutting cameras.
No, again, it's the most important aspect of it to a certain extent.
Of course.
It's such a small percentage. I think I'll go chronologically. The first thing is organization. The producer and the director are responsible for the look of the show. The director is responsible for where the cameras are going to go, depending upon what sport it is, whether it's basketball, whatever. Where are you putting the cameras to best give you the ability to tell the story? Again, the game above all else. It's always been the motto with the NBA. Every year, the game above all else. And then secondly, in a position like I have to tell our story. I'm not telling a story, I'm telling our story, because I'm not working for Turner. I'm not working for ESPN. I'm working for a company that directly answers to in a certain way a professional sports team. I have to be a mouthpiece for that team myself.
Whose product is
the product? Yes,
the sports.
Yeah, the product is the Cleveland Cavaliers, and myself and the producer, we have to align all that. So a lot of my work is done days, weeks before. If we're going on the road and rolling into a city, if we're going on a 5-game West Coast trip that starts in Denver, I got to go, okay, we're going Denver, Utah, Phoenix, LA, flying home. All right, Denver. Denver is altitude, so I got to know what network they are. Altitude's 1080, we're 720. That means our transmission now has to get converted from 1080 to 720. Are we good there? We're going on the road and we're doing what's called a dual production, which is a reciprocal business agreement between us and Denver. When Denver comes to Cleveland, they get 3 cameras. When I go to Denver, they give me 3 cameras, which means I only have, instead of like say 5 cameras, or for like a home game, I have, 8, 9, 10 cameras. On the road, I have 3 cameras. I have my tight follow. I'll have a slash opposite our bench. I'll have a handheld near our bench. And I will use those. I'll be able to utilize those cameras any way I need to tell our story. But I also need to be able to go to Scott Bay, who directs the Denver Nuggets, and go, Scott, what are you going to do with your slash on a hero? What are you going to do with your handheld at the free throw line? What's camera 1 going to do when there's a review of the referees? And we have to all work together. And then this way, okay, so now all the pictures, we've got all the pretty pictures covered. Now the next thing, where's our locker room? Where's our interview room? Where do I need other drops? Where's our Spanish radio? I need to put a monitor up there so Rafa Hernandez Brito can see our feed, because we take his audio and send it down SAP back to Cleveland. I am the final gatekeeper technically for everything that has to happen on that show. I don't, I don't, and I say this, I don't care what the content is. I do care because again, it's my team. These are my guys. This is my team. 55 years living in the city. These are my guys. But I don't care what the story is because that's our producer's job. That's our pregame producer's job. My job is them to tell me, hey, we need to be able to do this today. And I go, okay, no problem. I got this. And here's how we're going to do it. And that's just part one. Then part two is the game. I have to know the sales elements. Hey, is there anything new today? Is there a new sales element? How does it get branded? Does it come from the Viz, which is our graphics system? Does it come from the switcher? Does the TD fire off something that has a branded logo on it? Does it have both? I have to mark that on my script. I'm marking it like a guy doing a news. Hey, this has two things on it. Then I have to get those elements from the producer, give them to the Elvis op, get them loaded, then get them into the switcher, run them a few times, show them to the producer. Is this correct? Is this the right logo? Did we download the right thing? Are we good? Do all of that. Then at some point, I got to go out and have a camera meeting with my camera people who hopefully read my paperwork, which got done weeks ago, telling them where I want my cameras placed and where I need my monitors and where I need my head. I need, not even just the technical aspect. It's, I walk into a truck, I look at the audio person, RA1, and I say, I need 3 headsets at the table, 2 headsets and a spare. I need 2 stick mics. I have an RF mic. That RF has its own IFB. I need a backup mic for our sideline reporter under the basket with a married IFB. I need another stick mic for them at their seated position with an IFB in case their RF mic dies. I need a mic in the press conference room. I need a separate mic in the press conference room to do one-on-ones. I need, again, it's kind of this, and then it's, okay, I need a camera here. I need a camera here. You, handheld op. You're going to be on the floor. You're going to shoot our open. Then you're going to go and do all your game stuff. Then you're going to go into the hallway and you're going to shoot a walk-on with an interview with a coach. And then after you'll come back out, you'll do the game. And then after the game, you're going to go into the locker room or into a press conference room and shoot interviews. I'm essentially air traffic control for these people. And I'm the one who has to kind of like point everyone, hey, you have to go here. And that doesn't even get you to, all right, now let's cover the game. At the end of the day, if my bosses or the NBA isn't seeing what they need, it doesn't matter how organized I am. Am I covering the game? Am I entertaining the fans of Cleveland? Is the NBA happy with what we're doing? Are my bosses happy? Are the sponsors happy? Again, like I said, the game above all else. It's about that. It's about the game, but I have to tell it from our perspective. I've, after so many years of doing this, crafted how I like my cameras to cover the game. I don't cover it like everyone else, and especially when I go on the road and I have to share resources. Hey, how do you use your slash camera? How do you use your handheld? I do this and this. Okay, well, just so you know, because you're going to probably be stealing mine, I do this, which isn't what you do. And then we have to work around it one another. But again, at the end of the day, communication. We always joke, this is a communication business.
Yeah.
Myself and the producer talk more than anyone else. And we make, 10,000 decisions a night. And not all of them are going to be right, but as long as we were organized and we were clear with what we want, at the end of the day, we're going to walk away with a really good, entertaining show.
So tech manager, especially on the road, visual storyteller, right? Tell me or give me a myth or something that it's not. A lot of people don't make the connection that 5 days that you just described, 5 games or West Coast swing, involves a whole lot of travel. Talk about You can't do sports without travel. You can't do sports without working on weekends, holidays, all of that different stuff. It takes a toll.
Yeah, again, that was the biggest thing for me when I started doing this. You're going to do all 82 Cavs games. That's great. And then you start doing the
You
math.
start
Oh
doing the
wow,
math,
in
and then you're like,
November,
ooh.
from like November from like November 14th till like the 23rd, I'm going to be gone for 9 days because we're going to be in Texas and Oklahoma City. Or this year, end of the season, we started the Saturday before Easter, flew to Denver, off day Utah, off day Phoenix, LA. Uh, it's live sports is nomadic, and because we travel, I mean, because all the games, half the games are played on the road. I've spent the better part of the last 15 years, more or less, living out of suitcases half the year. You have 41 road games. You have to be there. You miss holidays, you miss weekends, you miss family, you miss things.
Family.
There are, early on in your career, everyone says, well, you can't miss those things, and you really can't. Now, if I needed to take time off or something, if something urgent were to come up, yeah, I mean, I need off. But for the most part, that's part of the sacrifice with this job, is knowing that you are traveling 6 months out of the year. And I go back to 2014, 15, when LeBron came back. You're traveling till June. Somebody's traveling because you're doing something, and myself and the producer split those up. We weren't able to do games anymore, but we were still doing content. We were doing pre and post game shows. So one of us was always on the road producing content to send back to Cleveland for the shows to have. And it was a lot of hard work and a lot of long days. But
It's brutal. It's career paths. It was because of the travel. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm 20 years into teaching, is I could not hack the travel.
COVID accelerated the REMI model. For those who don't know, REMI is essentially cameras and audio on site, and a mix of everyone else either on site or back in a studio somewhere in said city. COVID kind of, we did world feeds because you just couldn't bring people into buildings and arenas, but it accelerated that
process.
And like this year I traveled. I think I did, of the 41 road games, I think I did 12, 13, not counting the playoffs. The rest I stayed in Cleveland. So again, it's again a different animal. It's a different learning curve. But there is still that element of travel from time to time.
What is the most rewarding part of the job for you?
The friendships. I have met some of the best people in the world from all walks of life. People who will be my friends forever. Guys who I will reach out to even after we have quit doing this. Gary Lehman, Atlanta Hawks, Atlanta Braves, TNT director, legend. He retired about 2 years ago. He's a big Cleveland Hawk. He lives and dies with the Browns. So him and I are always texting. always, hey, how you doing? Um, I think that's the thing. It's because whether you're camera person, or a producer, director, an audio person, it's such a small fraternity that we especially those of us who've done it for so long, you just you can't not be friends, and that to me is the best part of it is is that friendship, that camaraderie. And then on the off chance, once or year or on an off day, if you can meet up with someone, it's magnificent.
You are far enough along in your career that I know this happens. So, last question. This is what I ask everybody. Um, what would you tell now that you've lived X 1 and 2 and you're cruising along? What would you tell the young rock and roller that wants to get into this business? How would you advise them? What would you tell them uh, that they need to know? Because we're now we apparently blinked our eyes, and now we're the guys that are being asked, "Hey, I want to do this. What do I have to do?"
It sounds it sounds I feel like sometimes I say it and I see a couple of, I'll speak to a college class. Your work ethic, your attitude, and your ability to work with others supersede all of that. I don't know who it was. It might have been John, who you had on earlier, who said, I'll take somebody who's got a great work ethic and is going to work hard and try, but has average skills, over somebody who has a horrible work ethic but is really good at the job. 10 times out of 10, I'd rather have that person. This is a hard enough business. That's, again, at the end of the day, everyone has to remember it is a business, and it's a demanding business because there's so much money involved, based on sponsorship and what it costs to produce a single game, that you can't just brush that aside. But if you can walk in with a kick butt work ethic and a great attitude and an ability to just work well with others, you're set. Learn everything. The other part of it is learn everything. Don't pigeonhole yourself. Um, you can find a niche, find the thing that you enjoy, camera, replay, audio, any of it. Learn that niche, make that your base, but step outside your comfort zone. You know, try and get involved in other things, do other things, because if you end up in a position like I have, I now need to understand more everything. Yeah,
Everything.
audio doesn't work. Well, what doesn't work? I don't know. The encode, the thing that plays music, doesn't work. Okay, is the system down? Is it playing music and you're just not getting into the audio board? There have been many a times, and maybe I'm a little too hands on. I'm the director who's going to stand over an engineer's shoulder and go, "Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do that?" And I've had a couple engineers go, "Look, just go away. This is our world." And I'll remind them, I built 2 TV trucks, little ones, but I built 2 TV trucks. I'm not every director. I've gotten dirty. I've run cable. I've wired a truck. I've installed a switcher. Um, I've hooked up a transmission unit in the bowels of Boston Garden so that we could do, the new one's not much better. Trust me, I got I got to become good friends with all the critters underneath the stands at the new one. But again, I learn as much as you can, because all of that, even the the most mundane thing, the score bug, it hooks up. Well, learn how it hooks up. Watch the engineer hook it up. Because if something's not right, maybe you can go, hey, this isn't plugged in. Ask questions.
Ask questions.
That's my strong suit. I've asked a lot of questions. I know a little bit about everything, enough to be dangerous. And then, I'm a competent director.
Dan Sevic, can't thank you enough for being a part of the project. Well played, sir. Hope to see you soon.
Yeah, we definitely have to meet up face to face and do this.
Thanks again to the multi-talented Dan Sevic. You can check out his work directing the Cavs broadcasts on Bally Sports. The Zoom with Our Feet podcast is a production of TV Commando Media. The ZoomPod theme is by Novembers and their funky groove, Cloud 10. Until next time, creators, if you're not working on the craft, you're not learning.